always thought that MIT Sloan women were something special, even more special than the average Sloan student, because you had to get over so many barriers to get here. So this is a very exciting session designed to help you share knowledge across the classes as well as within your class groups. So you're currently seated within your class groupings, and we've put a list of 3 questions on the tables that we want you to discuss, and there will be one person reporting out for each set of 1 or 2 tables, or in one case 3 tables. And we'll shift, after half an hour, we'll shift to a panel mode, and the panelists will report back on some of the stuff that you've said in response to these questions at your tables, and then we'll open it up to everyone. We're hoping to encourage you also to do lots of networking while you're here. There's nothing more powerful than an MIT Sloan Women's Network, and you should be using it. So trade your cards and put your email on the list that's going around so that everyone can stay in touch. So at this point, go ahead to discussing your 3 questions at your table, and the person who's facilitating at each table should identify herself and keep an eye on time, okay? Take a little longer on the first question and then a little less long on the others. And introduce yourselves as you do it. Okay, go to. Okay, up till now you've been talking within your cohort, your class group. But now we want to talk a little bit across some of the class cohorts and do that by means of our panel here. So let me just quickly introduce the people on the panel. And I don't want to take too much time on this, so you also have it on your tables. You have a handout with the information on them. But let me start at this end with Danielle Sewell, who is our most recent graduate, 2013 graduate, who focused on economics and private sector development in emerging markets while she was at Sloan. And she organized a SIP backpacking trip and started a meditation group called Sloan Sit, right? It's a great title. And was a Peace Corps volunteer in Niger and coached women's agricultural cooperatives in marketing and business strategy. She also worked in Senegal for Dahlberg and spent time at MIT doing research into food supply chains in Ghana. And so she's now at Cargill. This all led to going to Cargill, a global commodities trading firm, where she's joined the strategy and business development group. And our next one is Rena. All right, they're in the wrong order on this, so I have to keep turning it over. All right, Rena, class of 2009, an innovation executive at Salesforce.com, where she focuses on design thinking-led transformation to help organizations discover how to change their business by looking through their customers' eyes. She focused on corporate strategy and sustainability when she was here at Sloan and graduated in 2009. She has a BS in supply chain management from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and 10 years of experience in working in strategic sales for enterprise software. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, loves to cook, hike, and spend time with her husband and 2 young daughters. Let's see, Laura. Laura is from class of 99. She's a technical director at Orchid. Is it pronounced Orchid? Yeah. Yes, okay. An organization developing tools and processes to address name ambiguity for researchers. Previously as Director of Advancing Innovation at the Kauffman Foundation, Laura directed the iBridge Network, an innovation catalyst for university collaboration and technology commercialization. In prior positions at Ford, Avid Technology, and several startups, she turned around, launched, and led 4 other high-profile initiatives, the most visible of which was for Ford's board of directors. She has, in addition to her MBA from Sloan, she has a master's in science and computer science from Brown and a bachelor's of engineering from Stevens Institute. Okay, Jill is our class of 94 rep. She's senior networking marketing manager at Boston Children's Hospital. She focuses on enterprise-wide strategies for local and national growth initiatives. And before this, she was director of marketing at Stora Tooth. That's a fascinating name. A 10-person startup in stem cell banking, and led the marketing launch of a telehealth business at Philips Medical Systems in their New Ventures group. And prior to these roles, she was vice president of retirement marketing and customer loyalty programs at Fidelity Investments. She has her MS in management from Sloan in '94 and a BS in chemical engineering from Brown in '84. And let's move to Stephanie Sonnabend. So Stephanie is class of '79. This is the one class represented here that was before my time at Sloan. She does speaking now. She's an inspirational speaker to groups of all sizes and ages on topics which resonate with audiences of especially women, such as living your passions, strategizing about your career, and getting on a board. She recently retired from Sonesta International Hotels Corporation after a 35-year career in the hospitality industry. She led the publicly held family-controlled business through numerous business cycles with Sonesta-branded hotels, resorts, suites, and cruises located in the U.S., Egypt, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Ecuador, Peru, the Netherlands, Italy, and throughout the Caribbean and Bermuda. In 2010, she co-founded a foundation, or a campaign, I guess, called 2020 Women on Boards. It's a national campaign to increase the percentage of women on U.S. company boards to 20% or greater by the year 2020. She talked about this in our SWIM's last conference, and it was fascinating. Okay, so that's enough of an intro. Let's start with the first question, and I think I'm going to start at your end, Stephanie, and let you tell us first, what were the most pressing issues that the classes at your table were dealing with, as well as your own pressing issues?
So our table represents the 70s and the 80s, before many of you were born over there at that end of the room. And issues for us, again, are what it's like for those of still working, what it's like to be some of the oldest people in the room, as opposed to either the in the middle or in the youngest, and taking a look and say, okay, where are we? What's the transition? Do we stick with what we're doing now? Do we move on to something else? And is that something else something that has more impact? Some people at our table are talking about, working more with indigenous cultures or trying to save the planet. Or, as I said, for me, it's about helping women advance their careers and getting on boards. So we're really taking a look and saying, okay, having had a successful career, what's really next for us now? And how do we balance that with issues that we have potentially related to our grown children?
Okay, thank you. Jill?
We had a good discussion, I think, about balance. Balance with family. We talked about some people wondering how it's going to be with their parents who are beginning to have some issues, I think, across a lot of our people. And then children. So we talked a lot about children and how that relates to being a woman, whether you're in or out of the workforce. We also talked about redefining and relaunching careers, especially for women who have taken time off or who haven't. But how do you keep the thread of the career, and how do you maybe go back in? How do you redefine yourself? How do you maybe start something new? And so a lot of it was about sort of looking back and looking forward. And we talked about meaningfulness, about what we're doing and what we want to do in our lives. So a lot of it was really about this sort of the balance in general.
Yeah. Okay, good. Laura?
Yeah, I worked with the class of '99 and 2004, and it's really interesting. I think that's a real transition point, because if you look at the issues that the class of 2004 were looking at, and you look at what the class of 1999 we're looking at, they're sort of like, oh, hurrah for that. We're on to this next thing. And so in the class of 2004, it was a lot of questions about, you know, how do you find that outside help? What do you do? How do you advance your career while you're trying to take on some other things like new family life or children? And how do you make that balance work? And that balance feels very fragile. And when you look at the class of 1999, the things that they were talking about were more about work-life integration. How do you build the career, build that position that then allows you and affords you that that flexibility in your life so that you can make your whole life work. And so I got the sense that there's a level of experience where they can start creating the jobs that will that will afford them that flexibility. So it was an interesting transition to have both of those classes.
That is interesting. Rena?
Yeah, so we had two tables of class of 2009, but I believe the two tables were slightly different because we had Sloan Fellows on one table and Lana's a little bit different. And then we had the MBA class, so I think they're at different levels in their career. So from the Sloan Fellows class, it was a lot about the marriage and children, like how do you maintain that work-life balance and maintain the career, explaining to the husband what they do and really explaining to what life, you know, first time in a large company, retirement and second career came up, and then, you know, staying with the company for promotion or, you know, to start up to get more lateral and then balancing family and work as a company owner. For the MBAs, it was really about when to leave on your own terms. We had a really good conversation about like knowledge of when to stay and dealing with ineffective managers just to get through it versus when does that satisfaction come from work or outside of work. So I think there's a question of that 5 years out of, you know, how much do we do this, and choices to manage two-career household. I think we had a lot of conversations about two-career households and when do you make the sacrifices for people who are, for either one of you that is either having a great career or not having the great career in their life?
A tough issue indeed. And for the most recent class, Danielle?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I don't know if it's because we have somewhat less of the work-life balance that we kind of went really big, like what are the pressing issues of our time as women, but we decided to tackle it all. But we do have some that I think are well tied in. So one thing that we talked about was as a pressing issue is as women that we have a responsibility to do something to change the way the workplace works. And we were sort of talking about how, you know, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? So whether that's speaking to younger people who are coming up, or whether that's taking a stand and helping to get women on boards or whatever it is, you know, we really there's an obligation to do something, especially because a lot of times we do have credibility in the positions that we're in and our background. Another thing was, one thing we talked about was that when you're at MIT, a lot of times you are fed sort of encouragement, but also this feeling of ambition, and you can be CEO, or you can, you know, do these huge things. And I guess what we thought about was a lot of times when people are older, they say the things that they are most proud of actually don't relate to their career. So how do you measure success? How do you, define what a good life and what a success looks like beyond the sort of conventional parameters? And then I think the last pressing issue was that we need a different model for what performance and success looks like in the workplace, and not just for women, but for people. So maybe less face time, less about hours in the office, and more about, are you driving results? And that could benefit both women and men. So.
I like that a lot. So were there any things that at any of the tables that were major issues on major responses to this question that we didn't get out? Okay. So let's move on to the second question. What would you ask of the alumni from the older classes? And this time I'm in a reverse direction and start at your end. So you again, Danielle.
Okay. And so we really, hopefully will get favored in getting all of our questions answered because we didn't really touch the last one because we figured you guys would all have a lot more to reflect on the advice and learnings. So 4 major questions that I think we had. The first was, how do you deal with the challenges of people thinking that you need help or you can't do it because either you're a woman or because you're young? And that was something that we were really interested to hear, when you're on a team and maybe you're managing people, but one person had an example of, she said she's effectively managing a team, but her boss was always kind of bringing in other people who were either older or who were men and saying, oh, they can help you. And it's sort of like, well, I can do it, and I am doing it. But so how do you deal with that and to some extent manage up to your boss and really show that you are capable? The second question was, what has been the impact of MIT? How has that made a difference? What changed pre and post? The third was, when you're evaluating, and I hope you're all writing these down right now because we expect answers. I at least want all the answers. But the third was, when you're evaluating a new opportunity, what do you look for? One thing I think we've realized very quickly, we were just at Sloan last year, and you're sort of in this wonderful fantasy land of ideas and inspiration and intellectual exercise. And you choose a direction, and then you get there, and you're like, oh, so this is what it looks like. And I think that some of the things that we were using, the criteria we're using to choose an opportunity, we realized maybe weren't the most important criteria. So what are the things that you really found to be the most important? Maybe it's the boss is the deal breaker or whatever, but those kinds of things. And then the fourth was, what are concrete actions that we can take that you've found to be effective to support other women in the workplace? So, obviously Stephanie's example is great, but networks or mentorship roles, what have you found to be a really great way to both receive help and provide help to others who are coming up? So that's a lot, I know.
Yeah, some tough questions. And I should say that as we go up the line this time, I would encourage the rest of you to take a stab at one or another of these questions in addition to posing your own. So pose your own first and then take a stab. Rena.
Okay. Well, let me answer. Should I answer one? Because I have it in my head. So one of the first question you had is, how do you deal with people thinking you need help? I would say I always take the help. So if somebody says you should talk to X person, it's because they thought through that and said that X person has something that you might grab onto, or it's just a network. It's a new person. It's a new coffee chat. Maybe they don't know anything. Just make that connection and make that appeasement because you get it out of the way, or they do have something. Everybody has something to offer, and the success I've had is through the networks that I've created and always sort of taking up somebody. It doesn't take that much time. You think about how much time you surf Facebook or you surf something like a website. Think about the 15 to 20 minutes it takes to make a coffee chat. And that coffee chat could make an impression for life. Like they could leave the company, they could be doing something else one day, they could make that connection. And you're like, hey, I know you from here. And then they also, some people like to mentor other people that are younger than them, so they actually feel invested in you if they took the time to mentor you in some way. So let them do that. I don't know, and send a thank you note for them taking the time. Sorry.
Nice answer.
Okay, so I have two sets of people. So one, I'm going to pick one from each because they have a lot of questions. It's great. So I think one thing that I thought was really interesting was what did you find that you were taught and it turned out to be wrong? That's from this table. And I'm sorry if I'm ignoring all the other questions. I think that it's great, but we don't have time for everything. And I think one of the other questions that addresses a lot of the conversation was going on the other table was, what did you wish you knew when you made your choices a decision to leave a career or make a decision to switch a career? What did you wish you had known? And why did you make that? Did you make the right decision or wrong decision? And what did you learn from it?
Or a choice to stay.
or a choice to stay versus leave.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Laura, and again, you can take a stab at one of the questions that's been put on the table in addition to posing your own.
So, all right, I will take a stab at a question you just asked about choices to leave or to stay. I actually had one of those careers that did fits and starts. So, like, I would work, I'd be really successful, and then I'd stop and do something else, completely different, or left the workforce and then came back. So I've actually done that 3 or 4 times, and switched industries several times as well. So I think the thing I wish I knew before I started doing that is that it's really, really okay, and that you can build a successful career doing that. And in some ways, you build a very unique profile that gives you that flexibility to be able to create your own career and your own working terms for the work that you're doing. So that's probably the one thing I wish I knew, is that it was okay. The other piece of that, though, is that I wish I knew that it's so much more work to build the networks when you're doing it that way, because your network is so important when you're doing it that way. So the questions, I think I'm going to pick a couple that were unique, I think, to these groups. So with the class of 2004, one of the ones that I thought was really interesting is how do you navigate the conflicting ambitions and dreams that you have with your spouse? As you're working out that balance, you have 2 ambitious, really ambitious people, and how do you work out that balance? And then also with that class, is the question, which I kind of answered a little bit, was, are there examples of people who had their careers kind of start and take a break and move on, and what does that look like, and what do those inflection points look like? For the class of 1999, and hope I get this right because I wasn't at that table, is kind of similar, but it was more specific. If you move out of a position, you're in a position where you have a lot of responsibility, and you move on to the mommy track, or you leave the workforce for some reason, how hard is it to get back that P&L responsibility? What is necessary in order to build up that confidence that you can take on that responsibility again?
Good question. Okay.
And we actually had some of those same questions too. We actually had such a great time sort of talking about a variety of issues. We didn't come up with specific questions, but I'll sort of look at where we were. So
If you can answer questions too, don't forget that.
to answer one, I think, which was the question about sort of maybe what were you taught that was wrong? I guess if we thought that you could have it all, and you could have the perfect career and the perfect family and the perfect life, that probably is not true, because I think there was a question. I thought it was a good question about what about me. So we have one person who has gone back to get her doctorate and is relaunching herself in a new career and wondering how that is. And when you're approaching late 40s or early 50s, that's a tough thing, because ageism exists, especially in some industries. And you're now at a point when you can do a lot and restart yourself and redefine yourself, but sometimes the world doesn't let you, or they're not expecting you to do that. So we had a lot of conversation about these transitions. So that was one thing, it may not exist, or life will throw you a curveball, and then you just have to run with it. We have one person who has taken some time off and has been raising her children, and now is wondering, how do you get back in? So actually, we've got the same sort of question. And we also had big questions about this balance with family, but in terms of how we were ready and ambitious to leave the home, and how do we push the kids out of the home, because they are very happy and it's a good deal, and they're coming back after college, and how do you get them to fly the nest? So those are some of the questions I guess I would ask, is are there any silver bullets there?
Yeah.
But I think
Pretty interesting.
I think if we had one question, I think we would pass along if we could, is what will retirement look like? We talked about who's really going to be hiring all these 66-year-olds who are going to be still needing to work before, quote, Social Security, if it still exists, kicks in, or Medicare. So there's sort of this concern about what will happen as we try to redefine ourselves personally with regards to children, parents, caught in this sandwich. And I mean, I have friends who have been out of work for some time, fortunately not from Sloan, but what will happen? I have friends who never got married, who have don't own a house. What's going to happen? How will we be patching things together into retirement? How will we pay for that? I think there's a lot of being caught in the middle that's of concern, but really what's going to happen in 10 or 15 or 20 years? Will we be looking at what's next and what are some opportunities from a work perspective? But what if we don't have the financial security to make these things happen? So I think there's a lot of growing angst that a lot of things are going to be coming down the pike. And that's, it's a lot of questions and not a lot of answers at this point.
Okay, Stephanie, you get to answer everything.
You get to answer everything.
I get to answer everything, but I just also want to apologize for my whole generation, because the baby boomers, we screwed it up for all of you. We were the taking generation, and unfortunately not leaving a lot there for you to have to, or I should say, leaving a lot there for you to clean up our mess. But with that, there may be opportunities in and of itself. We again didn't spend a lot of time in terms of ourselves about what we would ask the older generation, because we kind of were the older generation, but felt that there's always value in learning from elders. And I think that was the thing that really came through, that there's real opportunities to just continue to learn from the wisdom of people who've come before you. And then also, again, a question for us was this whole issue of how do you integrate your values into the next phase of your career or your life, when you probably kind of have passed your peak of moving forward. Then what's next? What's next for you? And then taking a look at answering some of these questions. What to look for in a new opportunity. I believe everything's around culture of the organization, and that is so important. Culture of the department in which you're looking at, culture of the organization, how they feel about women. Which you can tell how many women are there in senior leadership, how many women are there on the board. These will tell a lot to you about the opportunity and how you will be perceived and the opportunities for you there. In terms of, again, what can we do, people do, what are some concrete things to support other women? It's really about offering and being there and helping each other, and don't be afraid to ask other people how you can help. What can you do for them? Because oftentimes we women especially think we don't tend to ask a lot, and so I think it's very important for us to offer, because I think that if we offer to help other women, then other people will branch out and help to be willing to help us as well.
I love that point. That's great. We're going to have to pick up and really quickly go through the pieces of advice from each of you, and then open up, and we can come back to any of these questions when I open up to all of you. But let's really quickly run through all 5 of you again. This time, give us a piece of advice you would give younger classes. And Stephanie, why don't we start at your end?
Okay, for us, it's a couple of things I think were really interesting. Ask for money. Ask for more money and negotiate. Work for, again, in addressing this retirement issue, money is important. So get as much as you can when you can. We had one person who said was in sales, work for a big company, who had the resources to really pay legitimately. But I think that's that, and then just be willing to collaborate and really focus on building teams.
Good. Jill?
Well, again, we didn't really pin this down to some degree, but I think we had a good discussion about being things that are meaningful, whether it's in your work or in your life. So I think one piece of advice would be, we did talk about culture, which is important. So that's, I mean, it's making sure that you're doing something that you are really enjoying and that has meaning for you and for the world, I'd say. So make sure that you're not just pushing things off. That you're doing something that's really valuable. We had a discussion about being in other countries where there's many more opportunities to really take time off to do things for yourself, for other people's, et cetera. And it's too bad in the U.S. it's sort of work, and it should be, if you're going to do that, really should have impact and be something that you're comfortable doing. So make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah, meaning was definitely a theme in both the 2004 and 1999. So finding that meaning and being really happy and energized, and you can do an amazing amount of stuff, and the money and the success will come. But another thing I'll just point out is being more brave and building confidence.
Between the two tables, so for the 99 MBA women was it's okay to work hard, but to take breaks along the way if you have a crazy career. It's okay to do what you're good at. So spend time trying to figure out what you're good at and spend the time really building that. Culture matters. So I think they've started to figure that out. Be gracious, thank you for things. Things will come back and bite you already. So if you're not, and same works for if you're managing people. And then 5 was negotiate. Make sure you negotiate for your salaries and all the things that come along. And then from the Sloan Fellow Women, it was use your 1 or 2 years at MIT to take a strategic internship if possible with a company of your dreams. So, sometimes you go up and sometimes you go horizontal. You need both to learn in situations. Find a good mentor. Use your network and figure out your core values and your skills and what work aligns to those two things.
Okay, Danielle?
Yeah, I'll just be really quick. But one thing that's interesting is I remember thinking, oh, well, we'll have the most questions. And then as it goes down, there'll be less questions and more advice. And that didn't happen. It's funny because I think it ties into what I guess I would say I've learned, and I might tell current classmates or current MIT students, is that you kind of have this idea that, okay, after grad school, I'm just going to be there, and I'm going to land, and that's it, and now I'm there. And there is no there, It's going to be constantly changing and evolving, and you'll always have questions, and you'll always be growing, and I think that's a really cool thing, and it's been a nice realization. So,
Just like getting tenure. You think when you get tenure, that's when they put all the work on you. Okay, so now I want to open it up to all of you to ask more questions, give more answers, whatever. Who would like to start us? Yes.
I'd love to hear more about just the whole dual income households and dealing with that balance, because I feel like it came up quite a bit at our table.
Can you repeat the question?
Dual income. She wants to hear more about the dual income issue and how you manage that in a household.
As opposed to single?
So like basically like dual career.
Dual
So
career, sorry.
How do you make choices, like if some, who wins basically, so.
And who wins when?
Yeah, exactly. So someone at our table is kind of going through this with her husband right now, and just trying to figure out kind of what choices to make. I personally packed up and moved across the country, when I was 7 months into what I thought was my perfect job at the time, because my husband was miserable in his. So how do you kind of make those choices and find balance in making them? And has anyone done that successfully? Who wants to talk about it? But it's something that kept coming up over and over again at our table.
Yeah, that is a toughie.
Well, I can just say I was the primary breadwinner in my family. My husband was an opera singer. And of course, you can imagine running a hotel company. I was also traveling a lot. We were internet. And he basically had to give up his career because there was no way that he could go. I mean, he was in Des Moines for 3 months in the summer, and then Sarasota for 2 months in the winter, and it was looking like he was going to have to go to Europe for 6 months, and it was I just told him, it's just not viable. We had 2 young children at the time. We just couldn't handle it, and since my salary was the one paying the bills, he basically gave it up. And to this day, he's sad about it. I mean, he's okay because he recognizes that it was a choice he made. But
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I can just add one little thing to that. So both my husband and I have had to do that, and I guess it's such a personal thing. I think it's difficult to have like a blanket piece of advice, except that you can do it. You can make those decisions, but I would encourage you to really step back and think about what's the most important thing. And some of those things where you're like, it would be career suicide. The number of times both of us have said, it will be career suicide if I leave my job, if I take this, if I move to another place, if I do whatever. And it's never career suicide. I mean, it's just a different experience. And no matter what you're giving up, you're gaining things as well, because you're making a choice and you gain financial stability, or you gain more time to be with your kids, or you might get surprising benefits even in your career that you don't even expect.
good. And you had
Yeah,
to,
I was just gonna say, I certainly do not have the answer to that, like a good one, but just to share, my experience so far is like who is making the most money, like does matter in these situations, right? I mean, like when I first got married, like my husband was making like a lot more money than I was, and like we both risen in our careers, but then now he's going entrepreneurial, and so it's like I don't know. Like I think what's tends to happen in my case is that like more money you make, kind of frankly more kind of control, for lack of a better word, you kind of have, and if it's not going to be like that, which it doesn't have to be, then it has to be based in some kind of shared value system that you have that is not, but where you can still make your ends meet.
yes.
So my husband and I went through that, and we took a bit of a different approach. So we weren't in that situation where one made more than the other. We were kind of both at the same place, and he made a conscious decision of we moved to Arizona so that I had a great opportunity to grow in my career, and then I left that opportunity to go start my own farm so that I would have the flexibility, and now he can go and pursue his career. So we kind of did her turn, his turn. And so, because careers are long, like somebody said that earlier, careers are long, but kids only have a finite time to grow up and grow up the right way. So we kind of took the opportunity of saying we're both going to give up, but at different times.
Yeah. Okay, good. One more response on this one, and then we need to go to a new question.
Sure. The one response I would have is thinking back over multiple decades of a dual career with children, is that you think you're in control, but you're not always. So, I mean, there can be really major life-changing events that can happen that will completely upset the careful plans. And the other thing that's really very positive is the economy and the workforce just change in really big ways that you really can't expect. So those are things to consider too.
Okay, so obviously this issue of dual careers, and actually I heard a really interesting question over from the class of 2009, or a point at your table about the difficulty of being the one person in a work group who doesn't have a family and therefore is expected, that's you, it was expected to stay till all hours, et cetera, because the family was an excuse that, in a sense, that was legitimate. And any other excuse wasn't legitimate. So that was a really interesting twist on the dual responsibility issue. Other questions? Is everything about dual?
well, I've got some other.
Question more about this community. A lot of women obviously care about this topic, and I'm just curious what we can do as Sloan women to support, moving women forward in the workplace and as a community, right? You can do a lot more as a community than you can on your own, and we've got a lot of different years here. And so I don't have the answer. I'm just curious if anyone has ideas.
So I have one thought right off the bat. Part of it is the maintaining your own network so you can respond to each other, and that's why we've asked you to write down your email information on that sheet, so it'll be saved with everyone who's here and shared. Another one towards the end, Donna is going to say a little bit. I'm chairing a task force to get more female students into Sloan, and we would love some help on helping us find young women to come into the school as well. But yes, let me take.
I want to answer that. I come from Mexico, and we have a group there that is, we don't have a lot of MITs Sloan, but we have a lot of MBAs.
You have what?
MBAs from all other schools,
okay,
from
good.
other countries.
Yeah.
So we form a group that we have an association that gives also support to all these.
All women MBAs?
Yes.
Okay, an association of women MBAs, not just from Sloan, but from all over in Mexico. So that's a nice touch too. I think wherever you can set up your networking with each other is very powerful.
I just had two comments. The one comment about how we can support each other and offer help. I think the one thing that we have a responsibility to do is to role model confident behavior. So when I see women in the workforce, they can be super smart, but they just don't speak up. Like, they don't ask the tough questions. They are, very cognizant of their role around the table. And I have found that, I've been successful just being transparent and being honest and being respectful and asking good questions in a bold manner. And I think the more we can role model that, I think that really has an impact. I was working with some woman last week, and I work with her CEO, and she's thinking about getting a different job, and she's very skilled. And I said, well, did you just go and talk to him? Just like simple things like that. So I think that's really important. The other thing too is, Joanne and I always have a little bit of this, when people ask me, oh, how hard is it being a woman in the workforce? And I'm like, it really works to my advantage. Like, people want women on boards. I run CEO peer groups, and these guys are begging me to bring women to the table. It is totally to our advantage now to be a free female. People are seeking it out at Sloan. They're seeking it out at business. I know some industries, particularly, in some places, it's difficult. But I always embrace it, and I just think it's an advantage. So that's just something.
There's many ways in which structurally being a woman has been historically a disadvantage to us, but there are many ways, and there's some that it still is a disadvantage to us, but there are also ways in which we can turn that into an advantage, and it can be an advantage now.
Yeah, I approached my new job. I actually sent a note to the guy and said, you have no women in your group. And it's an innovation group, and you're going to not think through innovation through the eyes of a customer if you have 0 women in this group. Mm-hmm. And it was a stretch role for me to get into this because most of the people had like 15, 20 years of experience doing design thinking, and I had 0 experience doing design thinking. But he gave me an interview.
That's great, and you got it. All right, that's what we like to hear. Donna, why don't I give you a minute now?
Okay, thanks. So hi everybody, I'm Donna Levinson, and I am here celebrating my 30th reunion. And do I need the mic? I don't need the mic. Do I? Oh, I do. Okay. And I also have the privilege of being the Director of Admissions for the MBA, Master of Finance, and MSMS programs. For those of you who have been here since the early 90s, don't worry, Rod has not gone anywhere. Rod Garcia is the Senior Director. Rod has the opportunity now, he has a lot more time to travel and continue to develop and maintain relationships that he really enjoys doing. But I have the privilege of actually running the day-to-day of the admissions office. So I really want to take the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about what we do from an admissions perspective. As Joanne mentioned, we are really focusing now on attracting high-quality women into our MBA program in particular. Actually, all of our programs. I shouldn't say MBA in particular. Let me just give you a couple of stats, if I could. Percentage of applications from women into the MBA program, any idea? Just applications. 25%. So we would love for that to be higher. Just qualified women interested in pursuing an MBA. That's one. So right now, in terms of where we are, the class from this past year, percentage of women was we weren't that happy about it, but it's 34%. The current class that we are still finalizing, so that we'll be matriculating this August, we are hovering between 38 and 39%. Our goal, we would love to have, actually, we'd love to have 50%, but we're shooting really for a realistic goal of 40%.
Is that different than other MBA programs?
Yes, we are low. Thank you for asking. We are low. Last year, Harvard boasted 44% women. And to be perfectly honest with you, the reality is there was a very small percentage of highly qualified women applying to business schools. Those women are getting into every school they're applying to, and this is not an OER pitch, but other schools have a lot more money to give to these women than we do. So, but let me just tell you a few ways where you all can help. So we travel the world doing our Sloan on the Roads. Hopefully you all get invitations to attend these. We would love for you to show up. For those who have never attended, the format is we do a presentation and then we invite all of the alums to come up in front of a room. I can't tell you how many times I've traveled and there have just been men in the front of the room. So to have a female presence in front of the room for this audience to see that there are Sloan female alums out there, that's number one. Number two, we also are doing some panels this year, Boston, San Fran, and in New York, where we will have female alums similar to this format address the crowd. And then the other thing that we do is an Ambassador's Day here where we bring in just women. I don't know, do you all get emails from us? I guess that's a really good question. Do you get them? No. So you don't get emails from admissions talking about these things? Very helpful.
People who are signing up
Well,
need to get on your
But not even just this list, that's a broader issue. So you do not know about these events?
Sloan on the Road, yes, nothing else.
Sloan on
I
the
don't
Road.
get Sloan on the
I don't
Road.
get Sloan on the Road anymore. I used to get them all the time in LA.
Actually, yeah.
I didn't get it.
Okay, so I'm going to stick around a little bit after this because I know we're running out of time, but come give me some feedback. We want you involved. This is just on the application process. We then have a whole yield campaign to attract these women too and want to get you involved at that point as well. So I know I don't want to take up too much time, but I will stay here afterwards. Please come talk to me.
So we need to wrap up, but
Sorry, I just want to mention two things about that. So Kathy Hawks, I work in the Office of External Relations here. And so if you're not getting the emails, that means you don't have your most up-to-date email address. I'm happy to take those for you and get it into the database afterwards. Kathleen is also collecting these from our office. The other piece that Donna mentioned about women's fellowships, this is something that we're actively pursuing, and we've had many alumni step up, a few alumni step up in the beginning here to move the needle there. It is something that we know we can do something about in attracting these candidates because the other schools are doing it. So there's no reason that they shouldn't be coming here, and if you'd like to talk to us about that, Kathleen and I both raise money for women's fellowships.
And I must say, we desperately need it. Having been in the dean's office myself, I have seen that we are way behind the other schools in having fellowship funds for this. So I just want to wrap up the panel as a whole. This was a really interesting process, and some of the questions you asked, for example, down there, Danielle, we never even got to all of them. So there's much more to say, and I hope you will continue talking about it. But some themes that were clearly major themes. One was the work family and the family dual career balance versus integration issue. And some of you may want to read work there's a book called Breaking the Mold by Lottie Balin. I don't know if you remember Lottie Balin. She's now emeritus, but it's about, she's shifted over the years from this view of that balance is the issue to one that integration is the issue. And so I heard that in the discussion between the 94 and 99, I think. So this issue of balance and integration is a really key one. And I also heard some interesting discussion of issues around values in your workplace and how your values and their culture connect, the culture and value connection, and how important that is. That picking your job, you shouldn't pick it because it has the best title necessarily or even the most money, but you want a real fit on culture in there. So I thought those were two of the most important themes that came up again and again. I want to thank our panelists very much. They were great, and I appreciate it, and I think we should all give not just them a hand, but all of you give a hand to yourself. leave until you've networked with everyone. Hand your cards around, talk to people.
And can I just make one comment? I speak a lot about advancing your career, both to get on a board, but just also generally. And so I've put together what I call a personal strategic plan. And so if you want that information, give me your business card and I'll be happy to send you, I call it From Passion to